हरि ओम हरि ओम।
शिव ओम शिव ओम शिव ओम शिव ओम
शिव ओम शिव ओम शिव ओम शिव ओम।
सच्चिदानंद नंद गुरु ओम सच्चिदानंद नंद गुरु ओम सच्चिदानंद नंद गुरु ओम
सच्चिदानंद नंद गुरु ओम।
सच्चिदानंद नंद गुरु ओम
सच्चिदानंद नंद गुरु ओम।
गुरु ओम गुरु ओम गुरु ओम गुरु ओम
गुरु ओम गुरु ओम गुरु ओम
गुरु ओम गुरु ओम गुरु ओम गुरु
व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वर गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरुवे पांडुरंग विठ्ठले हरि नारायण पांडुरंग विठ्ठले हरि नारायण पांडुरंग विठ्ठले हरि नारायण पांडुरंग पुरंदर विठ्ठले हरि नारायण पुरंदर विठ्ठले हरि नारायण हरि नारायण हरि नारायण
हरि नारायण हरि नारायण
हरि नारायण हरि नारायण
हरि नारायण हरि नारायण
विठ्ठला हरि विठ्ठला
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 पांडुरंग विठ्ठले हरि नारायण
पांडुरंग विठ्ठले
पुरंदर विठ्ठले हरे नारायण
पुरंदर विठ्ठले हरि नारायण
पांडुरंग विठ्ठले हरे नारायण
पांडुरंग विठ्ठले हरि नारायण
पुरंदर विठ्ठले हरे नारायण
पुरंदर विठ्ठले हरि नारायण
हरे नारायण सत्यनारायण
हरि नारायण सत्यनारायण
सत्यनारायण लक्ष्मीनारायण
सत्यनारायण लक्ष्मीनारायण
विठ्ठला हरे विठ्ठला
विठ्ठला हरि विठ्ठला
विठ्ठला हरे विठ्ठला
विठ्ठला हरि विठ्ठला
विठ्ठला हरे विठ्ठला ॐ पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः
Welcome to Satsang. How did being come into being? How can something arise from nothing? So, rather than go into too much of the philosophy, because it's important to me that this time of satsang stays a time of us delving into our truth. That's what satsang means, in the association of, in the presence of truth. It's not so much a class, a lecture, as it is an experience. And so I'll take this, but we'll take it in the spirit of, what does it mean for us? And so first of all, it's important to realize that there never was nothing. We're not talking about something out of nothing. In fact, the spirituality, I was saying last night that the spiritual tradition that we refer to as Hinduism is actually called Sanatan Dharma, which literally means an eternal way of life, no beginning, no end, that which always existed. And so if there was an always existing Dharma, Well, of course, there was an always existing divine. The divine didn't suddenly come into being. What it's more like is it's not something out of nothing, but it's many out of one. That's what happened. So it wasn't there was nothing and then suddenly there is something, but there was an undivided oneness. Call it God, call it the divine, call it the supreme reality, call it truth, call it love. Whatever word we use, it doesn't matter. And then here we are, feeling like these very separate, individual, multiple beings, being told that our journey, our path is to go back to God. And then, of course, the question arises, well, how did we come out of God to begin with? If it's all about going back, how did that one become many? And again, without getting lost in too much of the philosophy, the most beautiful and deeply personally applicable explanation for that I've ever heard, and the one that feels the most right in my own heart, my own experience, is First of all, we never did become many. That this illusion of separation is just an illusion, and that we actually are still part of the one. It's just our ignorance that makes us think we are separate. This ignorance that identifies as the body rather than identifying as soul. The ignorance that identifies as form instead of content. And so that's one important piece, is the one never did become many. There is only one. We are all just like waves on an infinite ocean. But even as a waveform, we never stop being ocean. So we are all just momentary forms of an infinite reality. And you can have an experience of that if you go deeply into meditation. You can sometimes touch that awareness of just beingness, just isness, not is happiness, not is peacefulness, not is even enlightenmentness, but just isness. So that's one important piece, is the one never really did become the many. The many is that illusion. And the essential and highest and most beautiful truth is to realize that you never actually did become separate from God. But that even in this individual form, you are God, like a wave is still ocean. Whether it's a 30-foot tsunami or a 2-inch little ripple, either way, they're still ocean. In the same way, whether we are a tiny baby, a big adult, whatever we may be, whatever the size or shape or color of our physical bodies may be, we're actually still divine. That's the truth of who we are, the core of who we are. And then there's this other piece, which says, well, okay, so yes, we know that's true. And we also know that we have these individual experiences that aren't an illusion. This experience of being an individual heart, an individual human existence. with its own individual recipe of all sorts of the stuff that makes us human. And so then, why did that one become many? And as I was saying, the only explanation that I've ever heard that feels in my personal heart like, yeah, is to experience the coming back together. And so think about it. To becoming one is beautiful, is extraordinary. Think about how beautiful an embrace with a loved one is. Think about how beautiful simply loving is, regardless of whom or what you love, but just the act of loving. But in order to love, there requires an other. It's very, very difficult to simply go within and love the undivided, unformed, ununique, pure consciousness of who you are. That's a very difficult actual experience to have. You can have an experience of touching it, of experiencing it, but then how to love it. If you're going to love, there needs to be the one who loves, and then there's the one who you love, and then there's this act of loving. So there's kind of three parts. There's me, the lover. There's the other being, a human being, a tree, a river, an animal. A human being living or having passed on, either way, whatever it may be that I love. But the beloved. And then there's this experience of love between us. Three pieces. And what I've heard is that the divine, in order to experience that act of love, that many becoming one, went from one into many. And the reason that this makes sense to me is if you think about your own relationships, and this tends to happen mostly in romantic relationships more than just friends or siblings or family members, but think about being in a relationship with someone in which it's nice, you love each other, things are going well, but maybe it starts to feel a little bit boring. What do? Unconsciously. Most of us don't wake up in the morning and say, I know I'm going to pick a fight. But unconsciously, a lot of us stir up drama in our relationships just for the experience of bringing that drama to a peak. You've got a fight. And then when you have a fight, what that fight is one, like the two of you had been one in this relationship, but that got boring. And so then one of you stirred something up so that one would become two. Here you are in a fight. And then what do you get when you fight? Well, eventually you get to make up, right? And the two become one again. And that act of making up, that act of again coming back together, is just the spark, the catalyst that a lot of times we think our relationships need. And so if you really go within and you're really honest and you look at relationships that you've had, chances are you'll be able to identify either you or the other one, or maybe together. Again, unconsciously, we don't wake up and decide we're going to do it, but it just happens that we create this conflict because making up feels so good. Making up in many ways feels better than just, yeah, everything's fine. There's something about the juiciness of making up after you've been in a fight that seems to carry more joy for a lot of us than just the continual, yeah, things are going fine. And so when I think about that, the idea that the divine also wanted to experience that coming back together, even though he, she, it, they, however we conceive of the divine, of course knew it's all one. It's never been anything but one. But just on the surface layer, that experience of coming back together is so beautiful. And that's why the one created the many with the loss of memory that we were part of the one, so that we, remember we are divine on the inside, so that we as divinity, as we remember we are divine, are coming back together. And that experience of coming back together being so beautiful. So what that means for us is, regardless of where you are in your spiritual journey, ask yourself, how can I experience that joy, that bliss of coming back to the truth of who I am? Okay, maybe I've forgotten. Maybe I have forgotten for every moment of the 25 or 35 or 65 years of my life. No problem. Puja Swamiji always says, whenever you wake up, it's morning. Right now, can you give yourself that opportunity to experience coming back together? Back to your heart, back to your truth, back to that place of love and expansion and perfection within the self. Can you come back to that? And that's what our spiritual practice is about. So I know that we had some questions last night that we didn't get a chance to answer. Yes.
Thank you, Guru. Yesterday it was very profound and some questions got answered. But still a bit of maze is there before I come to the main question.
Can you come just a little closer? Do you mind? I can just hear you a little better if you come a little bit closer. Thanks. Ah, perfect. Aye. Great.
So I just wanted to say quite a bit got answered last night. Thank you very much. Still a bit of maze is there. So before I come to the question, the desire of moksha, understandable. The path, a bit clear, a bit hazy, one wants to walk. One also realizes there are ways like Raj Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and the word was normal. The question was normal life and moksha. But whilst one is in normal life, there is dynamic play of energies, the tattvas. Sometimes one is doing the righteous job at workplace, but Rajasic is very, very high. Sometimes one, instead of responding, retorts also, the tamasic goes up. And then you are in and out. And sometimes the profoundness of the path gets lost. So the question, could you share one tool or a thought or an affirmation which is to be done daily, like a mandatory daily ritual which keeps us grounded or centered?
So, the most essential components on the path are love, surrender, and awareness. Those are, to me, the three most essential components of our spiritual awakening. Love, for many reasons. First of all, because it is the core nature of who you are. And so if you're separate from love, you're separate from yourself, you're separate from your truth. And love also because love does not require us to remember. So who do you love most in the world? Who do you love most? Or if there's many people, that's okay. If you don't want to choose between different family members, that's okay. One person you love a lot. Who?
Personally speaking, I
Yeah,
think,
just give me a name.
I think in disaster and trouble, I love myself the most because I have to save myself.
Okay, who do you love other than yourself the most?
My family, and yes,
Choose one person. It doesn't have to be the most. I'll take it back. We don't have to create competition. One person you love a lot in your family.
my wife.
Fantastic. Now, in the middle of a very busy day, do you forget that you love your wife? If in the middle of a busy day, you're in the midst of tons of things, if a phone call came that your wife needed you, you'd be there in a second. Doesn't matter how busy things are. You don't forget because you love her. You don't have to remind yourself, oh yeah, I love my wife. Because you love her. As Puja Swamiji always says, you don't have to take a mala, right? And say Jyoti, 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 Jyoti. You love her. It's there. You're working, you're driving, you're walking, you're exercising. You're with her, you're not with her. The love exists. It's always there. Love for the divine, of the divine. When it becomes something we really love, it's there all the time, we don't forget. And that's why I say love is, of the three, even the first most important. Because where there is love for God, really in our hearts, it's there all the time. Yeah, we're working. Yeah, we're busy, we're doing this, we're doing that. But we don't forget at any point that we love the divine. That love is always in our hearts. And that's where it really becomes like this beautiful line in the prayer that we chant here each morning that says, Mukhume Horam Nam, Ram Seva Hatme. Your lips are always chanting God's name. Your heart is always beating with God's love, even while your hands are doing the work. So where there is love, and that's why the path of bhakti yoga is so important, because where there is love, whatever you do, you're doing it as a lover of God. Whatever you do, you're doing it as a lover of your wife. You could be working, exercising, cooking, doesn't matter. Whatever you're doing it as a lover of your wife. The second piece, surrender. Because that which pulls us out of love is expectation. I love you as long as you are doing what I want you to do. And this is true whether it's our wife or God. As long as things are going my way, God is great. Oh, you're the best. But the minute that things are not going my way, we find ourselves angry at God. So frequently people are like, I've been praying to this form of the divine, but that's not working so well for me. I got fired from my job. My kid was kicked out of school. My house burned down. I need a new guru. I need a new mantra. I need to start going to a new temple. As though somehow God were a vending machine that was just all about, you put in your dakshina, you put in your puja, you put in your rice, your milk, your flowers, whatever it is, and you get out, money, success, longevity, everything I want. And when it doesn't work like that, we think, the vending machine's broken, forget it, I need a new vending machine. So surrender is required because you can't actually have full love without surrender, because then it's always conditional. You do what I want, I love. Don't do what I want, I don't love. So there has to be, along with the love, a surrender that says, I'm in your hands. I know I'm in your hands. And that faith. And the third piece is awareness. Because even though I love, and even though I've surrendered, I can get so caught up in the illusion, as you say, of the workplace. We're doing something, we don't respond, we react, we retort, we lose ourselves. Well, what is it that causes us to lose ourselves? No matter how much you love your wife, presumably sometimes you speak to her in a tone of voice that you later regret, that you think, my God. And what do we say? We say things like, that wasn't me. Well, what do you mean it wasn't you? Who was it? But we always say that. It wasn't me. I don't know who that was. Or we say, I didn't mean to say it. I love that one. What do you mean you didn't mean to say it? Then whose idea was it to say it? If you didn't mean to say it, how exactly was it that your mouth, your tongue, your vocal cords made the words come out? What we mean when we say that is, I lost awareness. I lost consciousness. In that moment, I was not grounded in who I really am. Ignorance, ego, patterning, false identities took over. And that's why we need to be aware. That's why all of our spiritual practices emphasize mindfulness. Because if I'm grounded and I'm mindful, I'm not going to say or do something that tomorrow morning I regret. Those things only happen when you're unconscious. So if I say to you right now, okay, on the count of 3, I want you all to take 30 seconds, and I want you to get as angry as you can in 30 seconds, okay? In your own mind. Get yourself full of rage in 30 seconds. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay. Was that easy or hard? Hard. Anybody else?
Couldn't do it, even tried, couldn't do it.
Great, couldn't do it. Now, but do you get angry sometimes?
Very much.
Anybody else notice that same discrepancy, that they couldn't even do it when they tried, but they find themselves angry a lot otherwise? Consciousness is the answer. You cannot consciously get angry. And what's interesting is even though, of course, I'm sure everyone could think of something that makes them angry, so we can all remember the last time we were angry. We know the things that make us angry. If I said we're going to go around and everyone has to tell me something that makes you angry, you could all do it. But what we can't do is consciously generate fury. Because it actually requires us to be unconscious. It requires us to be disconnected and ungrounded. It requires us to be in a pattern in our minds that says who I am, what I have, the universe in this moment, not right, not enough. I need you to be a certain way, to do a certain thing. Otherwise, I can't exist. But here in this moment, we know there's joy, there's peace, there's enoughness. And so you cannot generate that sense of fury. It only can happen when you're unconscious. And that's where awareness, if you can stay aware, you'll stay grounded. So if you take those back with you, stay in love, remember to surrender, and stay aware. And the breath is a fantastic tool. Every time you find yourself losing that consciousness, losing that awareness, you're in a board meeting, you're getting stressed, you're having a conversation that you're getting very upset about, something is going on in the world, you find yourself losing that sense of awareness. Bring your attention back to your breath. Because the minute that you're grounded in the breath, it brings you back to the present moment. And then that anger dissipates. And then you're able to respond, not react. You're able to stay grounded. And you're able to see anger start to come. Oh yeah, there it is. Somebody's saying something that you know you don't like. And you can see it. I mean, it's happening in you, but it seems like it's happening that from in a distance, anger is arising. But you watch it. And that watchful eye of it actually keeps it from growing and peaking inside you. Anger looked at doesn't stay anger.
Thank you very much, Guru.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Yes.
2 questions. How do we love the divine? It seems very abstract and hard to do just by wanting to do it.
Yes.
And I never found religious images or stories to really help. They seem abstract too. Second question is, why should we not hate the divine? Why should we love the divine instead of hate the divine because of all the suffering? And when we do hate the divine, when we become bitter against the divine, what do we do?
Beautiful. So, loving the divine, first of all, as you say, you've never been, that attracted by various images or stories. That's okay. When we talk about loving the divine, even those of us in a tradition where we may have images, it's not the image itself we love. It's the one whom the image is an image of. So for example, if I hand you a random picture of a random man torn out of a magazine, and I say, love him. Well, of course, you're going to find it very hard to love a picture of a random man you don't know torn out of a magazine. But if I hand you a picture of your father, it's going to be very easy to love him because it's your dad. And so when we are using images, it's not that we love the image. It's that we love the one who it's an image of. And the image reminds us of who it's of. And that's what it's about. So if you're looking at a piece of paper, and that piece of paper happens to be a photograph of your mother or your father or someone else you love, through looking at that image, it's going to inspire loving you. But not because the piece of paper has inspired love, because the piece of paper has triggered within you a love that already exists for the person who it's a picture of. In the same way, the images only work when we already love the one it's an image of. So if you don't, no problem, don't worry. Here's how you love the divine. Do you love anyone? Is there someone you love? Great. Now, how long have you loved that person? Fantastic. How old are you? 34. Great. So let's say that you've consciously loved that person for 31, 32 years. Let's say that for the first couple of years, you were just sort of loving by instinct. 31, 32 years, you have consciously loved someone. How many times over 31, 32 years has the body of that person changed? There is no answer. The answer is constantly. The body is constantly changing. If you go back and you look at a picture of what that person looked like when you were a baby, and you look at what that person looks like now, they're going to be vastly different. The body continually changes. Skin cells are being sloughed off every day. Our organs are regenerating every 7, 8, 9 years. Literally every 7, 8, 9 years, you have a brand new body. So the body keeps changing. But you've loved them continually. It wasn't that you say, but I loved that body better. You've loved them continually. And what that means is, what you love is content, not form. Now you might also love their body. You might also say, oh yeah, the body's beautiful. I love to hold their hands. I love to give them a hug or cry on their shoulder. But no matter how many times that body has changed, your love has stayed consistent, which means what you are loving is essence. What you're loving is content, not form. And the essence of everyone is divine. The core of everyone is divine. I could make it a little bit more visually morbid. Let's say we take this person you love, and bear with me in the midst of this imagery, but it's powerful for a reason. We take this person you love, and for whatever reason, tragically, God forbid, they have to have their hands amputated. Do you love them any less? Okay, then they have to have their arms amputated. You love them any less? Then they have to have their legs amputated. You love them any less? Now, we could go, again, as gruesomely morbid as this is, you could go slice by slice by slice through the torso, and there'd be no point at which you would say, okay, I no longer love them. Okay, the being I love no longer exists in this body in front of me. And what that means is that which you love in them doesn't exist in the body. Otherwise, as we chopped off the body limb by limb, at some point you'd say, oh, now I no longer love them because what I loved has gone in that limb that's now been amputated. But what you love is spirit. What you love is soul. What you love is essence. It doesn't exist in the body. There's no part of that body that could be amputated that would make you say, now I no longer love them. My love resided in that part of their body. Amazingly, when people develop dementia, and they have a brain lesion, they get into an accident and their brain is damaged, their personality changes completely. Family still loves them. People who loved them still love them. It's not you have a new personality, I no longer love you. Literally, even the way that they act, the way they speak, the things they like, the things they don't like, everything changes. We still love them. Which makes you realize that what you're loving isn't anywhere in the body. It isn't anywhere in their brain. It isn't in how they behave. It isn't in what they say. You may prefer certain behaviors over others. You may prefer certain ways that they speak over others. But you love them regardless. What you love is soul. What you love is spirit. What you love is essence. Doesn't matter what word we use. It's not a semantic issue. But you love that spirit of them, that isness of them. That's God. When we say the truth of who we are, the core of who we are, that spirit, that soul, that love, that truth is divinity. And when we agree that we're not going to fight on the semantics of it, that whether we call it God or we call it divinity or we call it soul or we call it spirit or we call it love or we call it truth or we call it essence, it doesn't matter. But that we're going to realize that we're all talking about the same thing. That isness, which is not your body, which is not your brain, which is not your thoughts, which is not your behaviors, but that just is. So if you can really love anyone, you're loving God. So don't worry, yes, you're right, it's very abstract to just try to love God. Don't worry. Love someone. Love anyone. But love them so fully that when you're with them, do whatever you can to connect just to their essence. Instead of being focused on what they're doing or saying or how they're acting or how they're dressed or whether they gained or lost 5 pounds or whatever it may be. Try to allow yourself to just focus on that essence of them. And the beautiful piece of that is, in order to connect with the soul of another being, you can only do it from the place of your soul. Thinking mind, judging mind, cannot connect to soul, spirit, consciousness. Intellect connects to intellect, body connects to body, we call it lust. Right? I mean, there's all the different connections we have, body to body, brain to brain. Thoughts to thoughts, behaviors to behaviors, preferences to preferences, right? We say, we get along really well, we like the same things. Same values, great. Intellectually compatible. But in order to connect to the soul, only the soul can connect to the soul. So as you are connecting to the soul, spirit, essence, truth of another being, you're doing it from that place in you that is soul, spirit, essence, truth. And that's divinity connecting to divinity. When in India we fold our hands and we say namaste, it literally means the divinity within me is bowing to the divinity within you. The divine in me bows to the divine in you. So it's this constant remembrance. Divine in me bows to the divine in you. So begin with that. Begin with bowing to all. You don't have to bow to how they act, bow to how they speak, bow to anything about them other than the divine in them, from that place of the divine in you. And then love anyone fully, deeply, and you're loving God. And then, in terms of, as you asked, why should we not hate God given everything that's going on in the world? Well, that would be hating the wrong being, unfortunately. That would be putting the blame where it doesn't belong. And here's why. So the core of who we are, as we've been talking, the soul, the spirit, the essence, that's divinity. But when we were created, this infinite, divine, perfect, full, whole, undivided love, truth, soul came into this universe using this body. And then the mind misidentifies as the body instead of as soul. And when the mind misidentifies, when the mind forgets who it is, rather than remembering, I'm soul, it thinks, I'm body. Well, if I'm body, I am a certain color, I am a certain gender, I am a certain religion, I am a certain race, I am of a certain nationality. I have certain things. I don't have certain things. And when I look out and other people have what I don't have, I want them. I feel jealous. I feel envious. And then I engage in behaviors to snatch them or get them for myself in some way. And I allow these thoughts to grow in my mind of separation. And then I start to hate the people who have it. How dare they? Why don't I have a purse like that? Why don't I have a house like that? Why don't I have a car like that? And jealousy breeds, envy breeds. When I think I am this body, then I'm very territorial over that which is mine. And of course, I'm always looking to increase that which is mine, because then who I am expands. Illusorily, of course, but this ignorance, this false identification with the body, if I can have more, then I feel like I am more. If I can have a lot of money, then I feel like I am a more important person. Have a lot of titles, have a lot of degrees, have a lot of power, have a lot of employees, have a lot of things. Look, I am more. Look, all this is me. Makes me feel like I am more. But it's rooted in ignorance. Because it's rooted in the ignorance that I am this body. That I am my role. That I am this drama I'm playing. The soul, the truth of who I am, is everything. So whether I've got 10,000 employees or whether I am one of 10,000 employees, either way, I'm infinite. I'm whole. I'm everything. When we have these beautiful, what we call sort of mool mantras, these core mantras. Aham Brahmasmi, Soham. They're just different ways of saying the same thing. I am that. I am the divine. And so that's who I am. But here's the dilemma. If I allow my mind to continue to identify as body, and therefore as my color, as my race, as my religion, as my nationality, as what I have, and therefore greed, envy, anger brews in me, my actions are going to follow suit. And so I'm going to engage in behaviors that are harmful. Harmful to myself, harmful to others, harmful to the planet. But those behaviors are behaviors that I've engaged in out of ignorance. And here's the thing. When God created us, for whatever reason, and I joke sometimes, half seriously, half jokingly, that I wonder whether God doesn't regret this particular part of the decision. But God gave us this thing called free will. And if I were God, I would seriously regret having done that. It would be like a parent that you buy your kids something that you think they're old enough for. Right? You think your kid is old enough for a chemistry set, and then he sets his brother on fire, and you realize, well, he wasn't perhaps quite old enough for that chemistry set. In the same way, I wonder whether God doesn't regret in retrospect having handed us this thing called free will. I don't know. But regardless, we have it. And that free will is what enables me to decide. I'm going to spend my life identifying as this body in its separateness. I'm going to believe that who I am is based on what I have, the money, the power, the things, as separate from others, and that others are objects on my path, hurdles. Or I'm going to identify as the pure soul. And I'm going to realize that who I am is love, is consciousness, is everything. And I'm going to spend my life focused on that. But I've got free will to make that decision. And that's the dilemma. But that's where what we call evil in the world. God didn't create a system of evil. If you look at nature, if you look at how nature works, and then you look at how humans work, you're able to understand exactly the role that free will plays in creating havoc and destruction. How many billions of years planet Earth survived beautifully before humans came along? This is the underside of free will. But that's not God's fault. That's our fault. So don't hate God. Hate ignorance. Hate ego. Hate misuse of free will. Hate the illusion of separation. And ideally, don't hate anything. Begin by being against those, but then slowly realize that which you're feeling toward them is growing in you. See, if I'm going to share love, first I have to manufacture love. I cannot love you until I create love in me. If I'm an apple tree, I can only give you apples if I can grow them on my branches. I can't give you what I don't have. And so, an air conditioner can only give you cold air. A heater can only give you hot air. It's all they have. And so, if I if I'm going to love you, well, first I have to generate love in me. In the same way, if I'm going to hate you, I have to generate hate from within me. And the problem with that is, it eats me up first. It's like a science lab where I'm manufacturing poison. Well, I'm manufacturing it in my house. The fumes are going to kill me long before I get that poison out to kill somebody else. There's that beautiful saying that says, anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other guy to die. If I'm angry at you or I hate you, I'm manufacturing this poison inside me. That anger, that hatred, I'm manufacturing it inside me. It's going to kill me long before it has any impact on you. And so, if there are things in the world that would make you hate, whatever source it is that's making that happen, figure out how you can be a light, right? It's like that beautiful saying of just, instead of cursing the darkness, be a light. How can you be a light? Yeah, there's darkness. And yeah, every one of us has the ability to be that light. And that's what we're called upon to do. There's a beautiful teaching in the Bhagavad Gita where Lord Krishna says, whenever there's darkness in the world, whenever darkness is winning out over light, whenever adharma, unrighteousness, is winning out over dharma, over righteousness, whenever evil is winning out over goodness, that's when I incarnate in form to restore light to the darkness, to restore dharma to the adharma. And then there's another beautiful teaching in which we're told, actually in so many ways, in so many different scriptures, that the divine pervades all of us. And if you take those two teachings together, what you realize is we are, every one of us is, that incarnation of the divine in form here right now to restore light to the darkness, to restore dharma to the adharma. That's what you're here for. But first you have to realize you're light. And that's what you're here for. Are there any other questions? Yes. You, in the front. Yes, the cordless mic. Do you have it? Thanks.
Yeah, namaste. My question is, how can one know that God has consciousness? And what is the reason behind that?
Why do you need to know that God has consciousness? How does not knowing that impact you?
Because in majority of the explanations that you gave just now, you said God created so and so, God So the ability of God doing so and so, that is consciousness. So how can,
Bear with me for a moment. I'm going to push you a little bit.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. It's important to ask permission. realizing that we're here, as I was saying in the beginning, not as a philosophy class, not as something that you're going to walk out of and take a quiz, but something that's actually enabling all of us to drop into our highest truth. What piece of this, what piece of is God conscious, is God not conscious, what piece of that keeps you from living in your truth? Because the core here is, look, if we've been created by God, and God is consciousness, are you conscious?
No, we, as human beings, I think we are.
You specifically, not human beings in general.
Okay.
You.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely conscious most of the times.
Good. And when you experience consciousness, what do you experience?
I think I'm experiencing consciousness right now.
Wonderful. So what's the problem?
No, I mean, the question is...
No, I understand, but stay with me.
Yeah.
Stay with me. What is it that is keeping you from experiencing your consciousness?
Ignorance, maybe.
Okay. Ignorance of what?
Ignorance of me being the soul, not the body.
Okay. How old are you?
I'm 22.
22. Wonderful. So, since you were about 2, you've been saying, I, me, mine. Right? 2 is about the age when kids learn me, mine. It's also about the age they learn no. Goes together.
Yeah.
It's why we tend to call them the terrible 2s. It's the age we learn autonomy. Look at this. I can throw a pea from my high chair onto the floor and look at how red mom's face becomes. It's a game. I throw my pea, mom's face becomes red. Look at this. Look how powerful I am. I've developed this autonomy. Me, I, mine. I drop pee or I spill milk. Mom's face becomes all red, her eyes get really big. Okay. Since you were 2, your body has changed innumerable times. Every cell of your being has changed. What is it that's constant?
The soul.
Don't just repeat back to me what I've said. Give it a moment. Can you feel that? Ask yourself, what is it? When you were saying I, me, mine at 2, and then at 5, and then at 10, and then at 15, and then at 20, and you say it today, what's constant? What is that? Feel it, don't think it.
No, I think it's the idea that something belongs to me. That is what I think is
That
constant.
something belongs to you.
I mean, the body belongs to me.
But the I is the I that isn't the body. So as you say I, me, mine, that's an identification with an I that isn't the body, no matter how many times the body changes. Okay? That's how we know that something is constant. Now, what your practice needs to be, and this is a perfect place to do it, and tomorrow we'll begin satsang with a meditation on this. But even before that, you've got 24 hours even before satsang tomorrow. Allow yourself, as you're moving through the campus, to keep asking yourself, who am I? Who is this I? If whatever you thought belonged to you were stolen, there would still be an I. This body belongs to you. But again, if God forbid something happened and you had an arm amputated, then you had another arm amputated, then you had your legs amputated, you would still say I. Who's that I? Who is that? What is that? So don't answer me. Because I want you to actually have the experience in yourself. And 22 is a great age. It's just the end of who everybody's been telling me I am, but not yet who I really know I am. So it's a beautiful time. And that's why I say, don't just repeat to me what I've said, because you've spent your whole life just repeating what everybody's told you you are. Feel it inside. Who's the I that isn't the body? Who is that? I'm not my clothes. I'm not my skin. I'm not my organs. I could transplant every organ of yours. You'd still say I. Give you a liver transplant, give you a kidney transplant, give you a heart transplant. You'd keep saying I. You're not your emotions, right? Sometimes you're angry, sometimes you're sad, sometimes you're happy. They keep changing, emotions keep changing. Different thoughts keep coming. You can't be your thoughts because the thoughts are always changing. Not the anger, not the joy, not the frustration, because those keep changing. Ask yourself, what is it that's constant? Who is it that's constant? We'll worry about whether God is conscious once we have an answer to whether you are conscious. Because that's what matters. You're here not to figure out what God is, but to experience that God inside yourself. And if you can experience that divinity within yourself and experience that consciousness within yourself, then you'll have the answer. Then you won't need me to tell it to you. Okay? So during the next 24 hours, what is your name?
Pashupati.
Pashupati, beautiful. Yeah. Great, perfect. So use the next 24 hours to see how close you can get to knowing who it is in you that is constant. Okay? What is that consciousness in you? And then we'll come back tomorrow and begin with the meditation on it. Okay? Wonderful. So, are you with us tomorrow night? Are you with us? Ab kal bhi hai? No, okay. So then we'll take, are you with us tomorrow evening? Wonderful. So we'll start with yours tomorrow, and we'll take yours as our last question for tonight.
May I ask question in Hindi?
Sure.
माँ ऐसा होता है ना मेरे साथ मेरी खुद की फीलिंग्स है आई एम 28 ईयर ओल्ड और ये मैं 5-6 सालों से ऐसा देख रहा हूँ व्हेनेवर मैं कोई भी पूजा करता हूँ या कभी भी मैं ध्यान करता हूँ इवन एट द जस्ट द गंगा आरती दैट टाइम ऐसा मैं बहुत ज़्यादा भावुक हो जाता हूँ बहुत ही ज़्यादा और वो 15 मिनट की कनेक्टिविटी पता नहीं क्या होता है मेरे अंदर आई डोंट नो बट वो 15-20 मिनट ही होता है उसके बाद नहीं होता कुछ भी ऐसा व्हाट द रीज़न बिहाइंड इट उस टाइम मेरे आंखों में आंसू आता है और मैं काफ़ी ज़्यादा मतलब भावुक हो जाता हूँ इवन इफ व्हेन आई रेड द बुक ऑफ द प्रेमचंद्र रस्किन बॉन्ड सो मैनी स्टोरीज सेम सिचुएशन जब तक पढ़ता रहूँगा वैसा मेरे सामने पिक्चर चलेगा उसके बाद एज यूजुअल सब खत्म व्हाई
So this takes us back to the first question. What he said is, so many times I have beautiful experiences of connection. Doing puja, I'm doing arti, I'm reading some book, some very spiritual book. I have these beautiful moments. But then they're gone, they're over. Why does that happen? And it takes us back to the first question of what do we need to stay connected all the time? Which is that love and that surrender. right? And that consciousness. So what happens is, when I connect, I'm experiencing the truth of who I am. Who you are is divine. And so when you touch it through puja, you touch it through arti, you touch it through reading something, you touch it through meditation. Yes, it's ecstatic, it's exquisite, we cry. Aankhon mein aansu aata. Then the problem is our thinking mind comes in and it pulls us out of the experience. Because the mind can only function in separation. The mind can only think about. So it's very good for making to-do lists. It's very good for balancing checkbooks. It's very good for solving math problems. But the minute our mind comes into our spiritual experience, we lose it. And so you're in the middle of this beautiful experience, and then suddenly the mind comes in. And it goes. And this is where we keep bringing the awareness back. Because the truth of who you are is infinity. As we were saying in the arti, right? The flames of the fire rise higher toward the sun because the source of fire is the sun. Water comes down because the source of water is the earth, the ocean. Everything is always wanting to return to its true nature. The true nature of who we are is infinity, is love, is truth, is divine. And that's why expansion feels so good, because it's taking us back to our true nature. It's why being in love feels so good. It's why, if you think about the words that we always use to describe being in love, we use words of expansion, right? We talk about melting and merging and swimming, or we talk about fireworks. Nobody talks about being in a box of love. We talk about an ocean of love. I'm melting, I'm merging, I'm swimming, I'm bathing. Fireworks. All is expansion. Volcanoes. They're all descriptions of expansion because that's who we are. And that's why it feels so beautiful. And so whether I'm experiencing love with another being, whether I'm experiencing love of God through that other being, whether I'm experiencing love of the divine through my prayers, through my meditation, through my puja, through my reading, in all of these cases, I'm touching the truth of who I am, which is extraordinary and beautiful and exquisite. And yes, I cry. And then the mind comes in. And maybe the mind comes in and says, oh, I'm going to be late for work. My boss is going to yell at me. I always get yelled at. It's not fair because I work so much harder than everybody else does, but my boss likes other people more. Not fair. And the thinking mind comes in. Or the thinking mind comes in and says, God, that's a nice shawl that person's wearing. I wish I had such a nice shawl. I don't have enough money to have such a nice shawl. Why is it that other people always have nicer things than I have? I've never had enough nice things. The thinking mind. Or maybe the thinking mind even just comes in and says, I'm having that experience that she was talking about in satsang. Oh, I wonder what to call this. In all of these cases, I've been pulled out of the experience into my thinking mind. And the minute that that happens, I fall into my patterns. Somebody says something I don't like, somebody does something I don't like, I'm full of jealousy, I'm full of anger. Why does this person act like this? Why does that person act like this? This isn't fair, that isn't fair. This isn't how I want it, that isn't how I want it. You cannot simultaneously be living in an experience of fullness and perfection and divinity, and living in smallness and incompleteness and not enoughness. So if there's a thought that I'm having that says, I'm not rich enough, smart enough, good enough, young enough, beautiful enough, successful enough, I cannot simultaneously be experiencing the truth of who I am. I cannot experience that state of oneness with God, oneness with myself, and living in the illusion that I'm not enough. And so this is what pulls me out of it. And a lot of it, we live in a culture that is always telling you, you should be fairer skinned, you should be taller, you should be thinner, you should be richer, you should be more successful, you should be more popular, you should be funnier, you should be whatever it may be. But we're constantly being told, you are not enough. You're not doing enough, you're not achieving enough. We're constantly being pitted against each other. And so our minds are constantly in a state of separation. Our minds are constantly in this state of, in order to be worthy of occupying my place on planet Earth, I have to achieve, do, be, become, win, earn. And none of that can coexist with spiritual awakening. Because the spiritual experience is an experience of who I am. Is not only enough, it's everything. It's fullness, it's completeness. It's love, it's truth. And sure, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't like to get, maybe a better job, maybe better scores on my math exam, maybe lose a little bit of weight, get in better shape. But that doesn't change my awareness of the perfection of myself. My capital S self, that is one with the divine, my source. To know that I'm already fully expanded. I'm already infinite. I don't need to buy the world, eat the world, shop the world, own the world, reign over the world. I don't have to, whether it's power, whether it's money, whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's possessions, whatever it may be that is my drug of choice to make myself feel fuller. I don't have to use it because I'm already full. All of that which we do to make ourselves feel fuller, better, the stuff we buy that we don't need but just to have it. All of the drinking, the drugs, the food, the indiscriminate sex, all of the ways that we run away from that internal sense of not enoughness, not whole enough, not good enough, not full enough. And so we think in this ignorance that if I could just buy more, own more, stuff myself more, numb myself more, have more friends, have more titles, have more power, then I would feel full, complete, enough. But of course it never works. And every bit of that pulls us away from the actual experience of just sitting in the present moment knowing exactly who you are is exactly who you are supposed to be and is exactly perfect and is exactly divine. and that experience of the fullness of the self. So as you find yourself losing it, just bring yourself back. Bring it back. Bring it back. You've got a wonderful blessing to already have that experience, even if it only lasts 15, 20 minutes. Because at least you know where you're going. At least you have had that experience of truth. So you know it. Use that as your North Pole, right? Such that wherever you are in the world, your compass is always pointing back to it. What do I need to do to get back to that experience? Because no amount of money, no amount of power, no number of possessions, no alcohol, drug, food, sex, anything takes the place of the experience of the unbroken fullness and completeness of the self. So keep coming back to it. Whatever you need to do that brings it on, bring it back. Just bring it back. Bring it back. And eventually you'll find it stays longer. And when you lose it, don't judge yourself. Because that's the other thing we do. We lose it and then the mind goes, oh God, you stupid thing, look, there you are judging again. There you are jealous again. There you are angry again. There you are trying to numb yourself again. And then we get into this state of berating ourselves. And that pushes us farther from the truth, farther from the experience. So the minute you find you've lost it, just bring it back. Just bring it back. Just bring it back. And that's the sadhana. That's the spiritual experience. And you'll find it. It'll happen. It's already happening. Good. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. We have Kirtan back